Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Check the Post of Exclamation. Brought to you by Nebraska Spine Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, I love college football. I love Nebraska football. And by God, do I hope we have football this season. Now, currently, I'm not going to break any news here. The Big Ten has announced that they're going to have a 10-game Big Ten-only conference schedule this fall. I already put out my gut reaction to that. I just want us to have freaking football. It's not ideal for this football season, but it's ideal to actually have some football. But my thought is, there's some extra things in every conference, in every college football schedule that's just kind of unnecessary. And a lot of that stuff's being weeded out right now, right? Could that actually be good and better for the long-term future of college football? Could schedules change in the future because of this for the better? I've heard other people offer their thoughts on this, so I thought I'd give my 2 cents worth as well. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about unnecessary things, I think a 12-game regular season is too many games when you have an additional championship game on top of that. Okay, now it creates unbalanced schedules. It creates more games versus FCS teams. All right, now growing up when I was younger, college football teams had an 11-game schedule. Now it's 12 plus the conference championship games. I have no problem with 12 games, honestly, as long as you include the conference title games as part of that 12th game, and everybody plays the same amount of games, including everybody playing on championship weekend. Adam, how in the blue blazes does that happen? We'll get to that here in just a bit. One of the first things I would also change as well, one of the next things I would also change as well, no more games versus FCS teams. All right, it proves nothing. And if the regular season is supposed to actually be a playoff week in and week out, then let's make each game actually matter. Now, I understand that the FCS schools, they need the money from the FBS schools playing these games. I've never understood that. I didn't know it was Nebraska's job to financially take care of Alcorn State or any other school you want to mention. Okay, now South Dakota State obviously was no gimme this year. Obviously, we're not going to play them. But I didn't know it was our job to take care of them. So for me, I say no more FCS schools. Okay, the next thing, I would go to 4 16-team power conferences. All right, let's make winning a conference title actually mean something. It tends to be the same teams winning the same conferences each and every year. Like Oklahoma winning the Big 12 each and every year and then getting boat raced seemingly each and every year in the college football playoff. To me, that needs to change, and that changes by making it harder to win a conference championship by putting more teams in those conferences. Now, what would probably happen, and this is a topic for another day, I'd probably take the Big 12 and disperse that conference. Geographically, it's easier to put them in other conferences. It's also not the strongest conference in the world. Now, here's how my regular season 12-game schedule would eventually lay out. Every team plays 12 games, including championship weekend. Again, I'll get to that in a minute. Every team starts out their first 3 games of each season are all non-conference games. All right, you're allowed 1 cupcake, 1 warm-up, however you want to look at it, not an FCS school, but kind of 1 cupcake-ish type game, 1 middle-of-the-road game, and every school has to play at least 1 Power 5, or in this case, it'd now be Power 4 conference team. Every single school has to. Okay, there's your first 3 games of the year. Your next 7 games. So you got these 16-team conferences. I would go 2 8-team divisions within each conference. Every team plays all other teams within their division. So there's 7 more games. You're one of the 8, so you would play the other 7, I should say. So you got 3 non-conference, 7 division games. There's 10 easy games right there. Now, everybody in each division plays the same teams. This is fair, right? Because right now, Wisconsin could potentially play Maryland, Indiana, Rutgers, and Nebraska could potentially play Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're comparing who's the best team in the West and you're trying to compare all these teams to each other, that's not even comparing apples to oranges. That's like comparing watermelons to grapes. Everybody needs to play the same teams if you're going to try to find out who the true division champion really is. There's 10 of your 12 games right there. Very easy to get to. Your next game. For me, this is kind of fun. It'd be one of the games I look forward to the most each and every college football season if this actually ever happened. I call it a crossover game. All right, so the idea behind the crossover game is there's a lot of teams that don't play each other anymore that used to be rivals, but now they're in a different conference. Texas A&M, Nebraska, Oklahoma. USC Notre Dame could keep their out-of-conference rivalry alive. So a crossover game If you have a big-time out-of-conference rival, okay, a team you have a big rivalry with that's not in your conference, and you don't want to waste a non-conference game every year, because if A&M and Texas are playing every year in the non-conference, Texas probably isn't going to go ahead and play USC or Miami or something like that. They're like, hey, we're already playing A&M. So if a crossover game is separate, it's a fun game, it's a unique game, it's once a year, it's a big-time out-of-conference rival. Texas, Texas A&M, Nebraska, Oklahoma, USC, Notre Dame. Now, not every team has a big-time out-of-conference rival. So what do you do then? Simple. So if I'm Wisconsin, if I'm Iowa, I don't have a big-time out-of-conference rival, so I just simply play a team from the opposite division within my same conference. Okay, so Wisconsin could play Penn State, but it doesn't count towards your conference record. All right, again, this is separate. Only your 7 division games count towards your division and or conference record. Now, Notre Dame, BYU, for the love of all that's holy, would you please join a conference? I understand that Notre Dame's in the ACC and everything except for football. It only makes geographical sense that they should join the Big Ten. Whatever, just join a conference, okay? That would happen under my system. Let's just say they join the Big Ten. Now, for some reason, Notre Dame doesn't want to play USC for this crossover game. Who knows? They could then play Penn State. You could see Notre Dame, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, whatever. Another fun game that does not affect your conference record because you're not playing the same teams as everyone else within your division. Now, that's 11 games right there. Simple enough to get to those 11 games. I think it makes a lot of sense, at least in my humble opinion. 3 non-conference games, 7 division games, 1 crossover game. Now, the 12th and final game, let's address championship weekend. Everybody plays the same amount of regular season games, and nobody sits at home while other teams are playing in an extra tough game, a.k.a. the championship games. So how does a championship game work? Number 1 team from the Big Ten West versus number 1 team from the Big Ten East. Here's my question. Why is number 2 sitting at home from the West? Why is number 2 sitting at home from the East? I know they can't win the conference championship, but why are they chilling? Why are they eating Christmas cookies while these guys are beating the crap out of each other? Okay, so for me, let's play the same amount of games. So let's have number 1 from the Big Ten West, number 1 Big Ten East, conference championship game. Cool. How about 2 versus 2 from each division? 3 versus 3, 4 versus 4, 5 versus 5, on down to 8 versus 8. Now, I understand 8 versus 8 may not be a titillating matchup for everybody, but there is division pride on the line. Here's how I look at it. Championship games obviously matter. Okay, but every game on championship weekend matters because you're fighting for division pride and you're now fighting for bowl game positioning, which makes bowl games matter even more. And maybe everybody under God's hot sun won't sit at home and take bowl games off anymore. At least a little bit less anyways. Now, how would the home field work? Championship games are neutral. Other than that, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, it's the higher rated team or it's the team with the better record gets home field advantage. This is how I believe college football's regular season should work. Okay, just to recap. Now, everybody has the same amount of games, including championship weekend, 12 games. Everybody has the same amount of non-conference games, 3. Everybody has to play a Power 5 or, in this case, a Power 4 conference team in that non-conference schedule with no FCS teams. You have 7 division games. Okay, so you can find a true division champ. You have 1 crossover game, which I think would be a ton of fun if you just had a crossover weekend. Make it a crossover weekend across the board in college football. And then you got championship weekend. I've already described how that would work, where everybody plays and you're fighting for division pride and bowl game positioning. For me, I want to know your thoughts at home, ladies and gentlemen. Do you like this? Is this better? Is this worse? What are your thoughts? Now, we could talk about playoffs and we could talk about bowl games, and how you would do that. How you would do a playoff, how you would do bowl games, because there's some adjustments needed there in my opinion, but that's a different show. That's a show for another day. I will say this. The way it is right now, with teams playing 12 regular season games, a championship game is their 13th game. If we ever went to an 18 playoff, that'd be 16 games. That's way too many games for college football, in my humble opinion, because that's an NFL schedule. All right. You look at the NBA, I mean, they play 82 games in a normal season, obviously not this year. And college basketball teams in their regular season will play 30 to 33. Now, to me, I've always wondered why they don't play more, but we don't need to be matching an NFL schedule. Anyways, that's a show for another day. Sidebar, unnecessary tangent. All right, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you like my regular season plan, my regular season schedule? I've liked it. I've had it in the back of my mind for quite a while. I finally wanted to share it with you fine folks at home. All right. And I just hope we have some freaking football this year, and then maybe long term, we can make some tweaks and improvements based on whatever it is we're forced to do this year. Go Big Red, and always remember to throw the bones. Thanks again to our sponsor, Nebraska Spine Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, when it's your spine, you do not want to mess around, and experience matters. That's why you can trust the experts at Nebraska Spine Hospital, the region's only spine-specific hospital. They are the best and what they do.